fatal heart impacts, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and pass. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet out. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here, and now, whenever we last left off with this series, a brief summary or recap. Izuku Midoriya, he is a mutant, born of two people with quirks. Now, Midoriya's mutant ability. The day he was born was quite strange. Now, Midoriya, he was actually born with his mutant power. Along with his birth came the birth of a dimension. And the dimension was empty, uninhabited, new. Now, with that, the very moment that the sentry put the needle in his arm and injected himself with the super soldier serum, he created both the sentry and the void. The void fleeing off to inhabit a dimension. Now, unknowingly, this bridged the gap. The void falling into Midoriya's dimension, and the sentry unaware as to what the void is. However, all of his negative emotions and anything he's ever encountered in his life was thrown into the void. And you also do have Midoriya, the very day that he found out that this bridge was connected, and he was able to use the void's power. The void was able to be satisfied. Midoriya's childlike wonder kept him somewhat sane, and at least neutral and docile at the moment. Now, with that, we do have a couple weeks later at the Xavier Institute for Gifted Children, or the Mutant School. Now, with that being said, Izuku Midoriya, he has begun to learn more and more about his mutant abilities. And he's actually been trying to test them and try and improve upon them. Try and use them to their fullest. Now, the void does secretly let off more and more of his power be released by this child. And Midoriya, he can somewhat feel an increase. Now, we do have where his power is currently at today, as they do drop Midoriya off, or not drop him off, they do pull up to a fence, the driver is saying something as the fence does open, and the car drives in. Midoriya and his parents looking around. There are many different people here. There's a whole lot of mutants, and a lot of them do actually have instructors with them, talking and trying to get through certain trials of their own. Now, with that, eventually the car does pull up to the very, very front of the building. And we do actually have a man come out of the building, accompanied by a few other people. Now, Hisashi does get out of the car, as Midoriya does too, and then Inko, getting out on the other side and walking around. Now, the people that are currently standing in front of Midoriya are Charles Xavier, Wolverine, Colossus, and many other people. Midoriya actually somewhat listing off some of their names, and beginning to just get really excited, and fanboy quite a bit. Now, with that, Midoriya, he does actually want to ask some people for their autographs, and Charles Xavier does explain to the young boy that for right now, he can get the autographs later. and that they really do need to talk and explain certain things to him. Now, with that, they do actually begin to take a tour of the school, and Midoriya can see everything going on, as he is actually walking around. Now, he watches as there are very many different things going on. People are running around, studying, watching TV, hanging out. It's very insane, and this is a very, very big building. Hasashi asking a few questions along with Inko, and the teachers do actually give some answers. Now, eventually they are taken to a room, and Midoriya, he is actually looking around a bit more. As any typical child would, he gets curious. And while his parents are talking with the teachers and Charles, he actually does wander off. Now, after that does actually happen, Midoriya, he's looking around and wondering about different things. Now, he does want to see if he can use his mutant powers at this moment. He does know that he's begun to feel different things, different feelings, and he's able to somewhat control them a lot better. However, he's still new to all of this. He's only thinking about it the way a quirk would be, not the way a mutant ability would be. So, the way he's able to use it is very, very limited. Now, with that, Midoriya. He is walking around, and all of a sudden he does hear a very loud whoosh behind him, turning around and hearing it again. Before, he just begins to look around, hearing these strange and strange sounds. Midoriya for a second getting quite panicky, and eventually there is another whoosh, as he does actually look up, and someone lands directly on top of him. Midoriya confused as he sees a blue person, and he does actually go to scream out in somewhat fear. Now, the person does actually disappear, reappearing directly in front of Midoriya a few feet, him looking up and seeing them. Uh, what the heck? What is that? Is that your quirk? No, shh, I don't have quirks. All of us are mutants here. Okay, but why do I need to be quiet? Otherwise she'll find me. Now shh. Now, with all the commotion that Midori was making, somebody actually has come running through the wall. And as soon as they do actually appear, Midori does see them. As a girl, her hand comes through the wall, before the top portion of her body. Her actually having her hand completely be solid. Her smacking Nightcrawler all across his shoulder and saying, "Tag, you're it," before jumping back into the wall. Nightcrawler trying to go after her, his hand hitting the wall as it does actually go to run around the corner and find her. Now, Nightcrawler does actually turn and ask Midoriya if he's not going to play. Midoriya, he actually does somewhat just ask who was that. Him stating that that was Kitty, and then getting his name. I forgot Nightcrawler's name. Anyways, now, Midoriya does begin to run around the mansion, following Nightcrawler and trying to keep up. Now, Nightcrawler is actually quite surprised. Whereas he's using his mutant ability to teleport, Midoriya is just purely running around. He does actually seem to be quite fast. Now, he also doesn't seem to really be getting tired. He does somewhat show that he's breathing heavily, but even then he can go back running into a sprint quite easily. Him wondering for a second if he does have some sort of strength thing, or strength mutation. Now, eventually throughout running around the entire building, we do have Midoriya, who is currently running in a full-on sprint, as he actually does run past Nightcrawler, who then does teleport. Midoriya running past him once again, surprising Nightcrawler. as Midoriya does eventually find Kitty Pryde, him throwing out his hand and being able to actually tap her on the shoulder. Now, as soon as Midoriya actually does make physical contact with her, she wasn't even able to expect it, turning and barely even seeing Midoriya right in front of her. Now, Midoriya is able to push her, and the two actually do go falling forwards. Midoriya actually landing on the ground as Kitty Pryde phases straight through the ground and fall onto the first floor. Now, this actually is quite surprising, and Nightcrawler does actually ask Midoriya if he's okay. Midoriya getting back on his feet and turning, saying that he's quite alright. This is actually really fun. Uh, are you sure? You're sure you're not hurt? Hmm? No, I'm fine. Why? Him pointing back down at the ground. And Midoriya does actually see it, pulling his hand out of the floor and looking at it. Him looking a bit more confused before looking at the hole. And we actually do have Charles Xavier, who is looking back at Midoriya, along with Logan and Colossus, asking the young boy if he's quite alright, and if they are done playing their little games. Midoriya getting a bit more embarrassed, and going to walk out of the room. Now, the very moment he does actually begin to feel weird and dizzy. And this is actually quite confusing. Him going to clutch his stomach and somewhat move to his left, putting his hand on the railing. Nightcrawler actually watching. As Midoriya, he not only breaks the railing, but he falls over. And he goes to fall on the ground. Now, the very moment that this does actually happen, we actually have Inko. Her trying to run to the next room, hearing all that commotion. And she actually does go to throw up her hands. However, it's quite confusing, as whenever she did actually run into the room, we do have Midoriya, who is somewhat just floating there, with his eyes closed. Him opening them up and seeing his mother directly in front of him, as she does actually have a surprised look on her face. Charles wheeling into the room, along with Logan and many other mutants. Now, Logan simply just says in a very snarky voice, "Nice catch." And she actually does bring her hand down. This confusing everyone. Her turning and saying that that wasn't her. Huh? What are you talking about? Strange. Now, Charles is actually beginning to think. This is quite weird. What is this boy's mutation? He heard that it was darkness, or shadow manipulation. But how does that enable flight? How does that enable super strength? Him actually asking Midoriya if he's alright. Midoriya, still floating there, does actually let go of the piece of the railing. Wolverine walking over and picking it up, before knocking on the wood and actually getting out one of his claws, going to cut through it. Now, he does inspect and tell Charles that the railing was perfectly fine. He's guessing this kid broke it with just pure strength. That is what I thought, Colossus does go on stating, talking about how he will be a very, very good hero. Super strength, flight, what else could there be? Logan giving him a small list, saying shadow manipulation as well. Now, this is quite surprising. Midoriya has a very versatile mutation, and they actually think that he might be another rogue situation, where if he's in physical contact with somebody for far too long, he might be able to absorb their abilities. Now, Midoriya, he is still floating there, and eventually Kitty Pryde does come running back into the room. As everyone is talking, Midoriya is still confused, looking at the ground. As he does actually begin to try and focus. Him actually being able to move down before he does actually learn to move up. Him then at least trying to focus in a direction and move himself forwards. Now, as soon as he actually does do that, he begins to fly around the room, and everyone does still look at Midoriya, watching what he is doing, before he does actually just get a bit too excited, and he goes flying out of a window. Now, as soon as that does actually happen, he does eventually smash into a large tree, and hit the ground. Now, Midoriya, he was too busy having way too much fun with his abilities. He learned how to fly, but he did not learn how to land. Now, eventually Midoriya, he is found. And he is brought to Beast, the mutant doctor, who does try and somewhat figure out all these strange things. And he does actually ask Charles if he can perform a test on Midoriya, to which they actually do ask permission from Hasashi and Inko. They do give it, but they do want some details. They give it the okay, my bad, but they do want details. Now, Beast is basically going to test Midoriya's blood. It's the same premise that you would use for a quirk. However, they have to look for different factors, along with different things. Possibly even do some brain scans and look to see if there might be a mental trigger. Now, along with it, there is actually another test, where Rogue does actually come into contact with Midoriya. And this is quite strange. Whenever she does actually touch Midoriya's hand, or go to shake his hand, she is able to use Midoriya's power. However, with the fact that she already does have flight and, well, other strange abilities, she is unable to pinpoint where hers and Midoriya's would separate. Except for the darkness ability. That would be about it. Now, with that, they do actually go on talking more. And Midoriya is given permission to stay at the mansion for a small bit of time, along with actually being enrolled into this institute. Hasashi and Inko are going to ease Midoriya into it, but they'll take their time with that. Now, with that, we also do have that large tree that Midoriya did smash into. And Logan. He, well, saw Midoriya. He busted the railing. He busted the floor. He broke through a window and he hit a tree. Yet he's not complaining about any physical pain. Whenever he did actually find the tree, he looked at it. And did actually notice something off. Whenever you do actually take your eyes to the ground, the tree is somewhat uprooted on this side. So, the boy hit it with enough force to rip out roots from the ground, but not physically knock it over. So, Kate's a strange one and an odd one. Then again, with the right teachings, I would say, he might be a pretty good one. Or at least not as stubborn as Cyclops. I wonder though, what could he do? Then again, if Weapon X gets their hands on him, that would be an entirely bad story. So, looks like I gotta go out and do some hunting then. Now, that would be where Logan would walk towards the garage and go to get his motorcycle, lighting a cigar and driving away, as everyone does watch him leave. Now, with that, we do actually have within the Institute, over the next week, Midoriya beginning to come to class, or the schools they do actually have. Now, it is quite intriguing. Apparently the mutants, they aren't really going over some of the same things that Midoriya would go through in his normal school. They do still have math and other subjects, but then there's the fact that there's extra courses. And there is also a PE test. However, instead of physical education, you also do test your mutant power. And someone decided to spar against other people, since there's only one real way that you can make sure you can stay safe against somebody. Use your power against somebody. Usually, in this case, it would be Wolverine. However, he's not here at the moment. So they do actually settle for somebody different. Midoriya going up against Colossus, and being told that he must fight him. Colossus was informed by everybody and saw what Midoriya could do. So they do want to see about Midoriya's physical strength. Now, Midoriya is actually quite surprised. And Colossus does actually walk up to Midoriya, and actually does go to bend down in front of him. This giant hulking man is basically sitting down in front of Midoriya, or on his hands and knees, or, well, he's down taking a knee, my bad, and telling Midoriya just to simply just try and hit him. That is it. He wants to see where his physical strength is. Asking Midoriya to throw a punch across his face. And Midoriya, he actually does go to bring back his arm, and somewhat hesitates. Now, everyone around does simply look at him. And they are waiting. Some kids beginning to laugh and make fun of Midoriya, saying that he might not want to do that. He might break his hand. Others being very annoying, and some people actually trying to defend Midoriya. Now, this is whenever Nightcrawler, Midoriya's friend, or one of his newer friends, does actually shout out for Midoriya just to try and hit him. He can take it. And not to worry about him getting hurt. They have a doctor here. This being quite surprising. Midoriya taking in a deep breath as he just cocks back his arm and throws a punch as hard as he can. Now, this was quite surprising. 1 second, complete silence. The next second, ding! And Colossus is sent flying. Now, this is whenever Midoriya, he actually just look at his hand, or his arm, and where Colossus was. Him outside the building, along with a massive hole being put in the wall, as he is just standing there with his arm up. Many other teachers watching and trying to look for Colossus. Midoriya sent him a good distance away, and he is actually found. Him, actually, laying there and somewhat injured, as they actually do inspect his chin and see if he's alright. Midoriya hit him with quite a bit of force, a whole lot more than he was expecting. And he does actually power down from his armored state. And looking at the area, there is going to be a big bruise. Now, this is still quite shocking. Midoriya was able to hurt Colossus. And he actually does begin to get quite popular among more and more of the mutant children. Now, with all that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed. Have an amazing night. I will catch you guys in the next part.